school students on a day-to-day basis, and I'm sure it will be useful. And our last speaker in this part of the conference will be Dr. Michel Verhaeve from the University of Antwerp in Belgium. He is an associate professor at the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Antwerp and leads the research group MIOS. His field of expertise, he's worked with teens and technology. One of the latest was bullying online, self-exclusion, and other risks that young people run into online. He will be telling us about marketing mechanisms that convince or persuade young people to provide their personal data online.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be here, part of this very interesting conference. We had some interesting presentations this morning, very challenging, very inspiring, concerning different risks young people are dealing with. It's a pleasure and honor to have this opportunity to share with you some research results of our research group, but it's also a challenge to be here and to stand in between you and the lunch. So I hope that I will be able to give you some information about another topic that hasn't been addressed this morning until now, namely how websites dedicated for children and teenagers are more and more commercialized, where also teenagers are invited to give personal details of themselves, but also of third parties like friends and parents for marketing purposes. Maybe you have noticed that in a growing number of websites for kids and teens, those young internet users are confronted with commercial messages. And I don't mean only the classical banners and buttons, the traditional forms of online advertising, but there are a growing number of hybrid forms of advertising, some kinds of hidden forms of commercial messages. The mingling between entertainment and advertising to raise awareness of young people for brands, to influence also their brand preferences. And sometimes those advert games or in-game advertisements are used to contact children and to ask them to give personal data. And this trend has raised concerns among researchers, policymakers, but also child protection experts. It has raised concerns on how young people cope with those new forms of commercial messages and how they react to marketeers' requests to entrust personal data. And these concerns are really justified, as researchers have observed that 2/3 of websites for kids and teens depend on advertising as their main revenue source. Moreover, Neuborn has found that the proportion of ad-free websites targeting youngsters decreased from 10% in 1999 to 2% in 2007. What's more, when a researcher asked 9 to 11-year-olds to sum up their favorite websites, 2/3 spontaneously enumerated websites of brands, and only a very small proportion was aware of the commercial and persuasive intent of the website. Finally, as we have found out in an analysis of around 300 websites targeting kids and teens, 8 out of 10 websites are asking personal data from young website visitors. So marketeers are increasingly integrating advertising in websites for youngsters, but also processing personal data using online forms, and also analyzing surfing behavior in social networking sites and other informative or entertaining sites. Because marketeers are very interested in this young internet population for three reasons. First of all, a lot of youngsters have their own budget, pocket money they can spend. Therefore, it's important for businesses to inform and maybe more persuade them to buy specific products and services. Secondly, marketeers want to invest in long-term loyal relationships by trying to create brand preferences at a very young age to possibly influence brand attitudes and behavior in the long run. Last, but certainly not least, kids and teens are very important influencers in their families. By informing and persuading them about benefits of specific products, youngsters can encourage their parents to buy these advertised brands. And this is often called kidsfluence, or sometimes more negatively, pester power, when children nag parents to buy specific products, sometimes leading to higher child-parent discussions and even conflicts. So that's why marketeers are increasingly investing in online advertising and direct marketing techniques to target these very valuable young consumers. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, we can ask ourselves several questions about online targeting of young people. First question raised by researchers concerns the age on which youngsters discern advertising messages from other types of media content, like information and entertainment. But maybe more important, researchers have also investigated when kids comprehend the persuasive intent of advertising. As online marketing is sometimes linked with the processing of personal data, one can ask oneself which personal information marketeers are collecting from young internet users and how they implement fundamental privacy rights. Finally, only a few studies have investigated how teenagers respond to the online data requests of marketeers. Do they easily disclose a lot of personal data, or do they develop a more protective attitude? Most research investigating the capacity of children to distinguish advertising from other media content has been conducted in the context of TV advertising. Several researchers agree that 5-year-olds can discern advertising from other TV programs, but when the researcher questions the young respondents about the main difference between a TV program and commercials, well, the most cited response of the young children are that it's just funny, shorter programs. What's more, until the age of 7, children do not understand the persuasive intent of advertising. When asked, for example, about the purposes of ads, children mainly refer to commercials as funny. It's just like cartoons. Or some are convinced that advertising is a kind of information, neutral information about new products you can buy. Starting from 7 years on, children increasingly understand the persuasive intentions of advertising. A few years later, they also can discuss and specify deceptive strategies that can be used in advertising, like, for example, overstatements or visual effects that are used to accentuate product details. Some researchers have also found that the role of teachers and parents is very important. Children are more skeptical towards ads in families and in schools where children are encouraged to discuss about the mechanisms of media and the mechanisms of advertising. And those young users are encouraged to have a critical attitude towards advertising. As most research has been conducted concerning TV commercials, we can ask ourselves today if these conclusions about awareness of advertising intent are also valid in an online context. Maybe online advertising is even more challenging for children to distinguish and to determine its purposes, as boundaries between information, entertainment, and advertising online are increasingly blurred. The first reason is that on the internet there are often no separators between other types of content and advertising. Next to the more traditional banners, commercial messages are increasingly merged with entertainment or information. By contrast with TV commercials, there are no audiovisual separators between content and advertising, like, for example, a jingle announcing a commercial break on television. Next to the lack of a clear audiovisual separator, young internet users are often exposed more time to a brand logo or advertising message than when watching TV. Because in a lot of countries, there are some regulations, some time limits of TV commercials per hour, and some specific rules concerning advertisements around kids and teens programs. Online, no time limits are imposed. Children and teens visiting commercial websites can be confronted a long time, repeatedly, to brand logos and other commercial messages. This is especially the case in online environments where entertainment and advertising are merged. An example of the mingling of advertising with entertainment are in-game advertisements, which incorporate ad messages in a game, like, for example, advertising billboards in a car or other racing game, for instance. Next to that, you have also advert games. Those are games built around a brand and sometimes more subtle around a brand personality, which augments the sympathy of the young gamer for the brand that is omnipresent in that kind of entertainment. Some advertisers also use puzzles, quiz, or other more intellectual games that need very special, long attention of the young participant to augment the time the youngster is confronted with the brand name or the logo. Newborn, for example, has observed that 55% of websites dedicated to minors offer the opportunity to play games that incorporate brands. These very attractive types of online branded entertainment not only try to raise young consumers' brand awareness, to influence their attitudes and their behavior towards some products, but some websites also use those techniques to collect personal data of youngsters. By organizing competitions, organizing clubs of gamers, youngsters are encouraged to disclose personal data. This information can be linked to their surfing behavior to enhance the knowledge about the young visitors, adapt the content at the presumed preferences. Moreover, teens' enthusiasm is sometimes used in what is called viral marketing campaigns to disseminate like a virus, a contest, or a commercial message through their online network. As websites dedicated to youngsters increasingly depend on advertising, and other online direct marketing techniques are used to collect personal data, we have conducted the following survey. We analyzed a sample of 294 websites dedicated to children and teens, and we analyzed those websites to find out which data were collected of the young website visitor, and secondly, how privacy rights set out by the EU Data Protection Directive were put into practice. First of all, we observed that 8 out of 10 websites processed one way or another personal data of young website visitors, especially in the context of information requests forms, subscriptions to electronic newsletters or contests. Very often, an unreasonable number of data were asked compared to the explicitly mentioned purpose of the data processing. As you can see in this first graph, not only name and email address are the most requested data, but also the home address is asked by a majority of websites, whereas 1/3 of the websites ask age and home telephone number. Next in line are mobile phone numbers that are asked for in 1 in 5 electronic forms. Other data are less requested, like spare time activities, studies, favorite brands and shops, and a small proportion of websites ask friends and parents' email addresses. A second observation, based on the analysis of those websites, is that only 4 in 10 websites include a privacy statement that summarizes basic information about, for example, the purposes of the database, but also who is the responsible person or what is the responsible organization for processing the data, and, very important, which privacy rights can be exercised by the person who entrusts personal details. Because based on the EU Data Protection Directive, individuals who disclose personal data have a right to access those data, to rectify mistakes, and, especially in this context, to object to the use of their personal data for direct marketing purposes. As you can observe in this graph, almost 9 out of 10 websites' privacy statements inform about the purposes of the data processing. 6 to nearly 7 out of 10 websites, including a privacy statement, inform their website visitors about their basic rights. A more striking observation is that only half of the privacy statements of these websites targeting kids and teens are written in a mostly understandable language, while half of the privacy statements use specific terminology, legal and technical jargon. Finally, only in 1 in 4 websites there is information included about the privacy policy for the parents of the youngsters. Having observed these data processing practices, we conducted another research, a survey about online privacy and data disclosure, and we interviewed around 1,312 to 18 years old on how they react on data requests in commercial websites. We asked the teenagers which data of a list of personal data they would surely not, maybe or surely entrust to a company in a website. As you can observe in this graph, teenagers are not very keen to provide contact details. Conversely, more teenagers are prepared to communicate different types of profile data, like their identity, their hobbies, their consumer preferences, etc. Teenagers are least willing to provide information of third parties, like parents' or friends' email addresses. But notwithstanding this very positive trend, half of the teenagers is likely to share their email address. 3 out of 10 are willing to provide their mobile phone number, and 2 out of 10 teenagers would provide their home address or home telephone number. We have also seen some gender and age differences between the youngsters. For example, girls are more likely to entrust profile data like identity, spare time occupations, favorite brands and shops, while boys, on the other hand, divulge more contact details. Finally, if we compare 3 categories of youngsters based on the degree in their second education, namely the first degree, the 12 to 13-year-olds, and then the second degree and the third degree being the 17, 18 years old, we see here that the youngest teenagers divulge less personal data. In sum, ladies and gentlemen, based on the different studies that we have consulted and also the surveys we have conducted, we conclude that there is an increasing presence of commercial messages in websites for kids and teens. There are some doubts concerning the awareness of young children about the persuasive intent of advertising, especially those new hybrid forms of advertising mingling commercial messages and entertainment. Finally, a lot of websites are processing personal data, and we see that teenagers in some kind respond to those online data requests. These observations inspire a plea to augment awareness concerning online marketing practices and purposes, and also to raise privacy awareness among young internet users. And I would like to give you one example of an awareness-raising campaign that has been conducted in Belgium that has had a lot of media attention, but also a lot of controversy. A consumer organization started a banner campaign in very popular websites for youngsters, promising a free subscription to a mobile operator with free text messages and mobile chatting if they were younger than 21 years old. The banner led to a professional website inviting the youngster to give a lot of personal data and also to give the email address of 3 friends. When they pushed on the send button, a web page appeared saying that this offer was really too good to be true, and that this campaign wanted to raise their awareness on the disclosure of personal data in websites. As I told you, this campaign led to a lot of media attention, but also a lot of controversy, but also a lot of free publicity for the website, including some tips and tricks how to protect your privacy as a teenager, as a kid online, and how to cope also with other online risks. So I would like to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, by stressing the need to include very concrete and recognizable situations in educational and sensitizing material, to foster youngsters' knowledge and attitude concerning the persuasive intent of online marketing and how they have to cope with online data requests. For example, use online games and other information and especially entertainment tools to stimulate the discussion among youngsters about those different issues. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would be pleased to give you more information about different campaigns that have been launched in Belgium, but also in other states, in other countries of the European Union that tried to raise awareness on the privacy issues. If you would like to have some more information, you can contact me by email, or you can check the website eprivacy.be, where you will find also some summaries in English about the different research projects we have conducted. And with the permission of the organizers, I would like to end with a little bit advertising. Yeah? Namely, I would like to invite you to an international conference we are organizing next year in May at the Antwerp University, dealing with different risks, but also opportunities children and teenagers experience on the internet. Please check our website for more information. Thank you very much for your attention.